Hello, and welcome to the Radiant Mission podcast. My name is Rebecca Twomey, and I'm usually here with my awesome co-host and sister, Rachel Smith, but unfortunately, she is not feeling well today, so she won't be joining us. However, we are still on our mission, and we are here to encourage and inspire you as you're navigating through your life and with your relationship with Christ. And today we are continuing the conversation with Dr. Vaughn. You met him last week. He is a traditional naturopath and iridologist focusing on helping people discover the root cause of chronic illness. And last week we talked about iridology a little bit and finding the root cause of chronic illness, healing, a lot of stuff. We dove into a lot. But today we'd like to dive even deeper into these topics. And one of the cool things, so first of all, thank you for being here again, Dr. Vaughn.
Thank you for having me. Loving it.
Awesome. Now, when I first met you, when we first started talking, you shared your vision and your mission, your goal and your creed. You shared that last week pretty briefly. But I found it to be extremely moving because it was really clear to me how important partnering with God is when it comes to our health. Mm-hmm. That, it's not just about the sickness, it's about our relationship with the Lord in all of it. Right. And it's really so easy in today's world to think nothing of God when we're sick or we don't feel good.
Right.
We're conditioned, we go to the drugstore or grocery store, wherever people get that stuff from. And let's say you're getting a bottle of Tylenol or aspirin or a cough suppressant or cold and flu medicine. And that's it. They take those drugs, suppress the symptoms. And God isn't considered in any of that. Mm-hmm. Of course, this is an example using like a headache or a sickness. But the same examples can be made for chronic illnesses too, because when you have a chronic illness, you're probably going to feel similar symptoms. You have pain or you're tired or whatever it might be. And then you cover it up with all these drugs. So I really want us to start with what it means to partner with God in our health and in our healing.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a deep question. Where do you even start with that one?
Right?
Yeah, I think it's, for me, it was, when I found the Lord, I was born again and I realized that I don't really know anything. And so even now I tell people like I'm 48, almost 49. So please have grace for me because I'm 15 years old, right? Like that's how old I am right now. I'm 15.
What is that? Because the man's brain isn't developed till 26. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. So yeah, so there's just so much we need to know and we need to understand. And this journey in life for me now is, before I was separated from God because of my sin. And when I was born again, now I come into this communion, right? With this, like the creator of all things. And it's so fascinating that we're made in his image. And so we have questions. Why do I have a gallbladder and a pineal gland and an appendix? And why do things work the way they work? And why do we get sick? And why do we have disease? And anyway, there's just so many questions. But the journey on our lives is supposed to be a partnership, and it's supposed to be a communion with God in every way. So just like we pray and we worship and, we do all these things because we want to honor God. How much more can we or should we be honoring God? Because these temples that God created are holy. And the example I love is that in the Old Testament, we had David and Moses, and we had these tabernacles built where it was a place to encounter God. Mm-hmm. And now, New Testament, Jesus bridged the gap. Now God lives inside of man only through the blood of Jesus.
Mhm.
And so now it's the temple of God, our bodies now is home to the living God.
Mhm.
And so why do we not think our health and what happens to our bodies and what we put in our bodies and what's happening to our bodies, why don't we think it matters? Or if things aren't going well, why do we think, God made a mistake, or there's a problem with God's design, or whatever? So for me, it's just helping people bridge the gap. I often use that analogy of a bridge. I want to be a bridge to help people understand God and creation and our bodies. And I did a whole series. You can watch it on my YouTube channel. It's called Partnering with God. It's partnering with God in health. And I did this like 14-part series. And where I actually did the series was here at the International House of Prayer in Kansas City. And I had over 200 people come to every class where I did this 14-part series. And what does it mean to partner with God in our health? So it's such a deep topic. There's so many things we can talk about.
Yeah,
But
you can't answer that in 20 minutes, huh?
yeah, but we can talk about a lot of different things, but we have to be in partnership with God in every aspect of our life.
Mhm.
That's really what it comes down to. And our health and understanding our health should be no different.
Yeah, it's that alignment.
So sometimes we only think about it when we're sick. Okay, we're sick. We need to pray. We want God to do a miracle. Let's get people together. Let's lay hands. Let's pray. Let's do a miracle. Like that's sometimes as far as we take the conversation
Yep.
about health related to our partnership with the Lord. And
Yep.
it's so much deeper than that.
Absolutely. You're so right. I mean, that is what we do, right? Oh, I'm sick. I need you. And, I think that it can be a beautiful thing that oftentimes it takes tragedy to bring people back to the Lord. Sometimes them going through something is when they start to dive back in, and then the Lord speaks to them and pulls them back. That's beautiful. But when we know better, and what we're all learning on this podcast and on last week's episode is that we can make the choice now. We don't need to wait until someone passes away or until our health is completely in the gutter. We can make the choice today to align with the Lord on our health and on our healing and seek Him and seek to learn about the human body. And that's obviously a lot of our listeners know what I became really passionate about when it came to birth, because it took me going through a really bad experience and going through the whole medical system and hospital birth and C-sections and, well, just one, a C-section and all that stuff to say, something's wrong here. This isn't right. This doesn't feel like the Lord created my body to have to endure all of these things. And thank God for God, because he really convicted me to learn about birth, to not just go from one provider, from the medical system to the midwifery system, and depend on the midwife to take care of me. He said, no, you need to learn this stuff for yourself. And it was in doing that I was able to learn how incredibly He created us. That it's literally, they say children are a miracle and a blessing. It is a miracle and a blessing. Anyway, that's a little bit of a side, but I think it relates to what we're talking about here, that when you really dig in to how the Lord created our bodies and how He created them to heal, it's amazing.
It is.
And you said it last time so well, that who better to go to than the creator of our bodies? That, man didn't create us, God created us.
Right.
So when we go to the Lord for healing, he can heal us, and He gave us a lot of tools to do that. In addition, not just the food, but also what we put into our bodies mentally, our spiritual relationship with Him. You and I have talked about the sun, and we've covered that in previous episodes of the podcast on how just incredible it is that He put this big sun in the sky that actually gives us life and everything else on this earth. We have been, it's another thing we've been conditioned and programmed in traditional society in the world to say, no, stay out of the sun, slather yourself with toxic sunscreen that's carcinogenic and is going to give you cancer, but put that on your body and never go out in the sun.
Right.
And unlearning that is like, I mean, that's its own podcast.
Yeah.
We already did two on
that. So I just had this thought of like, partnering with God. How do you answer that question? Kind of mentioned it in the first episode that we did, where we talked about God created a garden and said it was good.
Yeah.
And believing that we have everything we need that on this earth for good health. And that's found where? That's found in nature. That's found in God's creation. That's found in sunshine and the ocean and the earth and vegetables and herbs. And so that's why it's like, it seems so common sense and like it should be logical. I don't think we've realized how far we've slipped into a Babylonian culture, that we're actually relying on so many things that are not God. They're not creation. So how do we return back to the ancient path, to actually choose God, to choose creation? And not only have we separated ourselves from God's natural creation, but we actually often ridicule it, or we are told that it's bad for us, like the sun. And there's this whole like war going on between who's right and which way is better, the way of man or the way of God. So partnering with God to me is it's returning back to the ancient path of trusting God, of having faith in God. Yeah. And so trusting God and having faith in God isn't just praying for the miracle.
Sure. Yeah.
It's embracing the good foods that he gave us. It's embracing and learning that the sun is a good thing and it's a tool for our health. In fact, it's crucial to human health. I mean, explain to me why every dog and cat tries to find that little sliver, 2-inch thing of sun to lay in when they're inside the house.
That's right.
Right?
They know better than we know.
We have to partner with God and creation, or we will not find life, because he is the source of life. So I think maybe that's a better general understanding of like what I mean when I'm saying with partnering with God. It's partnering with creation and nature and original design and God's original intention and the ancient paths of old, because we have been so infiltrated with all things of man that has become our normal.
I think in that respect too, part of that is the time that we're in, that we are, we're in getting closer to, we could say the end times. Things are getting, the birth pains are getting closer together in the time that we're in. And what I see in this is the deception. Is kind of what you're mentioning about, we are told one thing and then we have to argue about it, right? Like this whole thing with the sun. Go in the sun, you don't go in the sun, the sunscreen, the not sunscreen. These products are toxic, but doesn't really matter. Everything is toxic. And we get into these arguments with people, and it's all a distraction. And it ends up becoming a deception, because we end up not making a move or not making a decision or not really truly embracing what we're supposed to be learning in that circumstance, because there's so much talk about it, right? Like we could have the same conversation about so many things in the, I'll call it the quote crunchy community, raw milk. Oh, let's get in a fight about raw milk. There are so many different things that I see talked about in the health communities that we need to just take a step back and go, why am I arguing with a person about this or talking to other people? Like, let me just talk to the Lord about this. Lord, tell me, teach me, guide me on the path. That's actually what I really loved about your testimony, Vaughn, was that, especially when you were talking about iridology and you said, I didn't want to just go down this path. I wanted to know if the Lord wanted me to go down this path. And so I prayed for his guidance in this.
Yeah.
So if you're listening in and you're thinking, okay, what are you talking about with this sun thing? I love my sunscreen. I don't want to get burned. First of all, listen to those other episodes so that you know how not to get burned. But second of all, pray about it.
Yeah.
Pray about it, because your conviction is going to be different than my conviction. You know, our convictions are not all the same. We're not all living the same parallel lives. Each of us are living our own individual life here on this earth with our own individual purposes. So just an encouragement, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do love what you say on your website about God's design for food versus man's design for food, and God's design for medicine versus man's design for medicine. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that concept, the whole God versus man thing?
Right. Yeah. So you mentioned it in the first episode about how some people even think like herbs and herbology is, weird and we shouldn't be doing that. It's such an irony to me, because some people, if they're concerned about herbs and different things, yet are we concerned or mindful of the potential shortcomings or deception of like what's going on in the medical industry? So it's like we have no issue going to the doctor, no issue taking something over the counter. Oh, my doctor prescribed this. This is what I need to do. It's almost like we don't question those things at all, but we question herbs. We question whether the sun is good for us or not.
Trust me.
What's that?
It makes no sense to me. You'll get a prescription and then you open the packet and it's like 14 pages of side effects. And people are like, oh, well, my doctor told me to take this, I'm going to take it. And then you tell somebody, hey, if you take dandelion root, it could help cleanse your liver. And they're like, oh, and that could counteract with all these other drugs that I'm taking. And I'm like,
no, there's no study. There's no proof. That's not proven.
Come on.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
not for nothing, but aren't pharmaceuticals based, like the whole reason pharmaceuticals exist is because of herbs, because herbal medicine was working so well. The pharmaceutical industry said, hey, let's make that into a nice little drug that we can package up and sell to people. So it's based off of it, but it includes a bunch of other garbage that is not good for us. Anyway,
so people might not know that you can't patent something natural. So you can't patent ginger, you can't patent turmeric. The only way to patent something is it has to be a man-made thing. So you have to synthesize or create something synthetic so that you can put a patent on it. So that's why everything that is a man-made pharmaceutical drug has a list of side effects. Now, you might have mentioned this because you mentioned the Rockefellers, but people might not know that when the Rockefellers created their medicine using a coal tar-based, petroleum-based medicine for profit, that they said these medications have to pack a punch. The people have to know that it's doing something in their body. So here you have this man-made thing where you're mimicking things as like a chemistry class with molecules and creating a synthetic version of something natural that packs a punch. Well, also, when they created these medications, they had to have side effects. In other words, they would not allow a drug to go out on the market unless it had a certain amount of side effects. For a couple of reasons. One is it had to pack a punch, and we had to know it's doing something in the body. But two, they knew that if it created other side effects, it would allow them to prescribe other medications to deal with those side effects and those problems. So the whole thing was set up as a business from the very, very beginning. And so this is, again, the deception of the modern medical industry that a lot of people don't understand is the enemy gets his foot in the door and takes a little bit of truth, which is like, oh, we need medicine, and God gave us things that are medicine, and all of a sudden twists it and deceives people into thinking that there's a better way. There's a better way besides God. There's a better way than what God originally intended. So actually, it's one of our creeds that says we believe God created medicine, herbs, plants, food, that the things of God are better understood by the body than man-made medication. Because all man-made medication, it's synthetic, it's a replica. What does evil do? What does demonic do? He's the mimicker.
Yep.
He replicates. Satan has nothing original in of his own. All he can do is twist and manipulate God's creation. So that's what the pharmaceutical industry is. It's a manipulation of something natural or something out of the earth that actually causes harm and side effects to the human body. Now, we don't have to dive down the rabbit hole, and we can, that modern medicine and certain medications have saved people's lives and revolutionized health. And yeah, I mean, there's no question that an antibiotic has been used to save a person's life. There's no question that an EpiPen saves somebody from dying who is having an anaphylactic reaction to peanuts. Sure. So I don't question that at all. What I'm saying is there's a better way.
Yes.
There's a better way. And God gave it to us from the very beginning. And so it's fascinating to me that you can take milk thistle, and there's thousands of documented research papers and evidence dating back thousands of years that helps heal the liver. And eye bright helps the eyes, and uva ursi is great for the kidneys, and every herb was created by God for a purpose. And we've learned the purposes of those herbs over studying them and using them for thousands of years. So it's an alignment. Herbs work with the body.
Yes.
Herbs are created by God, put on this earth for the service of man. David wrote that in the Psalms, that herbs and vegetables were put on this earth for the service of man. And so they're designed for us. Man-made things were not created and designed for the service of man. They're created to have side effects and pack a punch and cause other problems. And so they're not going to be as well understood by the body, because when you mess with chemistry, you're forcing an action. This is something I explain to my patients all the time. When you take this is a great example, blood pressure, okay? Blood pressure medication. People don't know what medication they're taking. They don't know what it is. They don't know if it's an ACE inhibitor or a calcium channel blocker, or what type of medication it is, or what a beta blocker, or what it does. Understanding what the medication is and what it does tells us everything to the root cause of why that person has high blood pressure. So those drugs force an action on the body. Okay, calcium channel blocker. It blocks calcium from getting into the blood vessels. So that's going to relax the blood vessels, because calcium is a constricting agent. Whether you like it or not, that drug's going to do that. When you take an herb created by God, that herb's only going to work to the extent that you need that herb. And what you don't need will just be harmlessly eliminated. It won't force any action on the body. You still have to be cautious with herbs and know what you're doing. That's why you want to work with an herbalist.
Yes.
But when people are on high blood pressure medication, I always tell them, as soon as you start doing the right things, as soon as you change your diet, you start taking these herbs, your blood pressure can drop abnormally low. Why? Because now you're healing the body naturally, and that medication you're taking will force that action on the body, whether you like it or not. It'll actually force the blood pressure abnormally low. So now you don't need the medication anymore. That's how you get off the drug, or you have to reduce the dosage, because you're actually healing your body naturally. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes.
So that's just, I know that's kind of a long-winded explanation of, like, God made things for us that work for us, that are designed for us, and the man-made things cause lots of problems, lots of side effects. They're going to force an action on the body. And when you start healing the body naturally, you don't need those drugs, because drugs are for sick people. Drugs are to force something to happen on the body because the body's not well.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get the body well, you don't need the medications. Like, I don't promote or advertise this, but one of my main goals and purposes is to get people off of drugs.
Good.
Because why? I want them off of the man-made system.
Yeah.
I want them not dependent on a Babylonian type of system. I want them to trust and believe and only need God, and believe that God has everything that we need.
Because he does. He does. He already created it. He created everything that we need. I actually found it really amazing. You mentioned blood pressure, and it was interesting to me that people are told not to drink or consume grapefruit when taking blood pressure medications. So I looked into this because, being interested in God's food creations and herbs, I wanted to know why. And it was because grapefruit can naturally lower your blood pressure. So if you take it in conjunction with a blood pressure medication, it could, as you used the word, abnormally lower. Now,
right.
Of course, I'm not giving medical advice. I have to say that because I'm not a doctor. But but it just made me think, gosh, that's so cool that this is another tool the Lord created to help, solve a potential problem for people. Now, I'm not saying replace whatever you're doing with eating grapefruit, but I will tell you this. I got sick a couple months ago, November. And, it was like a cold or COVID, who knows? And I don't do those tests, so I have no idea. But it was whatever it was. But you know what my protocol was? Citrus, soups, bone broth, chicken broth, and water with some sea salt in it. And I was just really focused on eating fruits and vegetables and healthy things. And my dad laughed at me. We were visiting my parents, and he laughed at me because he's like, I can't believe you're not going to take anything. You're not going to take cold medicine or cough medicine, or you're not going to take anything. You're just going to suffer through this. And I'm like, yeah, my body can handle it, Dad. My body is fighting whatever it is that is, coming after me right now. It's going to fight it. And so I'd go outside in his yard in Florida, and I'd sit outside in the sun. Felt horrible, but I'd sit out in the sun. I'd get my sun. I was eating my citrus. They thought I was nuts, man. But I got better in a couple days.
Did you make it? Did you survive?
Look at me now.
Yeah, you touched on something that I just really want to share, because the topic of today is this partnering with God concept, right? So what people really need to understand is that if we believe God created us in his image, if we believe that the body is amazing and should be doing what it's supposed to be doing, what do we think symptoms are? What do we think it means when you have a headache, when you have a rash, when you have a tummy ache, when you have any number of a myriad of symptoms that people experience in life? Do we believe the body's bad, that it's failing, that it should be stopped? It's an indicator that something's happening. It's the goodness of God. I love this. Oh, this is like what gets me so excited. It's the goodness of God that we experience symptoms because we know something's out of alignment with our Creator, that we can change something to get back into alignment with God.
Mm-hmm.
That's partnering with God. Not pushing it down, not suppressing it, not ignoring it, not making it go away, not taking a drug for it. Herbs, sunshine, water, food, it partners with what the body's already trying to do, because we have a good God who's trying to get us well. Which is why these symptoms are happening, because God is so good. He's trying to get us well. These symptoms are the body throwing off toxins, throwing off poisons, getting rid of mucus. Like, how do things come out of the body?
Yeah, they have to come out.
We go number one, we go number two, and our skin. Like, that's it.
Or when we're sick, we're coughing for a reason. There's a reason why you're coughing.
Yes.
And then what are we taught to do? Suppress it. So you're just
Yes.
keeping it held in instead of coughing it out.
Yes. So think about kids who are on drugs for asthma. They're taking steroids. They're doing steroid creams on their skin. They're doing inhalers. They're doing all kinds of things to suppress what God's trying to do, because God's trying to heal you. Mm-hmm. Like, I just think that's such a mind-blowing concept, that we don't allow the natural processes to happen because we don't understand partnering with God in our health. We believe in symptoms are bad and we have to suppress them and we have to stop them using man-made drugs, which pushes the sickness, the disease, the illness deeper into the body, that leads to chronic illness later in life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
We can
learned this
heal
the
our
hard
kids
way
now.
myself.
There's such an opportunity to heal our kids right now.
Yeah. I can totally relate to this. I was very much into just, the over-the-counter stuff for many years of my life. And I will never forget, this was an awakening moment for me. I was working in New York City. I was under a lot of stress because, as you can imagine, working in New York City, you're commuting 2 hours each way to work on all these forms of transportation. People are not very pleasant. And, working in a building in basically a cubicle scenario underneath these fluorescent lights all day long, never going outside. And I got sick. And because I had to go to work and I could not go, right? So I had to go, had this cough, and I was taking cough medicine. I had that cough for, I'm not even kidding you, for 6 weeks. Wow. 6 weeks of time that I was sick. And I just remember thinking, something is not right with this. And that was kind of one of the awakening moments of, I'm suppressing something in my body that needs to come out, and I need to heal in a deeper way. Now, of course, we're fast forwarding a lot of years. This was a while ago. But now I can look back at that experience and say, well, I wasn't partnering with God at that point in my life. That's number one. I wasn't doing anything to heal my body. All I was doing was trying to suppress the symptoms of whatever I was going through. And I know it was a combination of not being in alignment with the Lord, the stress of life. I was eating not great, staying up late, all of the things. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people can probably relate to this. And if you're listening and you feel this, then just know that there is a better way and there's another way. And Amen. I know it can seem hard to say, stop taking cough medicine, guys, or stop taking Tylenol and focus on getting to the root cause of what's going on with your body. Right. But once you do, I mean, it's beautiful. You're now able to really heal yourself and not live in that constant cycle and that circle that you mentioned with the Rockefellers. And that's the whole point, right? Take this pill, it'll give you this. Okay, take this pill, it'll give you this. And you're in a cycle and you're in a cycle and you're in a cycle. I love that you mentioned, you don't have to go to the doctor if you are empowered on how to heal your body and how to keep your body in alignment with the Lord. Yep. Going to the doctor frequently, I think, is its own sign of a problem. Anyway, I think you have some stuff to jump in on, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have to allow the body to heal. And so that's just a huge message of mine that, even in chronic illness, and I know it's hard and it's really hard to understand, but it's pretty phenomenal when you dive into serious conditions, actually believing that God is good and he's for us and he doesn't want us to have these issues, and that there is a way out and there is healing available to us, but actually believing that what's happening with the body is always an attempt to get well.
Yes.
Like, I'll give an example of something that is not good, like a tumor or a cyst, or, women having lumps in their breasts. There's always a reason. Like, I want everybody to know that there's a reason, and it's not a flaw in God's design. It's actually the brilliance of God's design that takes toxins and poisons and things that would hurt the body and congregate them in one small tumor or lump to protect the body from further harm. Like, he's a good designer.
Mm-hmm.
And so if just understanding that the body is always working for us. And so we have to partner in helping the body heal, cleanse, detoxify. Like, the same way that tumor formed, it will disappear. Mm-hmm. Because the way the tumor formed is through toxins and poisons in the bloodstream. And the life of all flesh is in the blood, Leviticus 17:14. So if you can cleanse and heal the blood, that tumor will shrink, disappear out of the body, because we've cleansed and healed the body. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that. I've seen tumors disappear. I've seen lumps in women's breasts disappear. And that healing is always available to us. There's something I heard that really stuck with me, I think that's really powerful, is there's no such thing as an incurable disease. Only incurable people. So our choices, our sin, whatever you want to call it, but the things we do that aren't right, that aren't in alignment with God's creation and design, that's what leads to sickness and disease and degeneration. And obviously kids are born into this, and they have nothing to do with the lot that they've been given in life related to toxicity and poisons in our world, or what they got from mom or whatever. But like, the healing from God is always 100% available. Yes. It's always available. Yep. It doesn't matter the name of it. Parkinson's disease, or multiple sclerosis, or cancer, or the Lyme disease, or whatever the worst of the worst things is, God's healing is always available if we're partnering with his design, and if we can align with the ability that God already put in the body to heal itself, to cleanse and detoxify and heal. If we can assist that process, we can and will reverse any disease known to man. Like, the Bible says that no disease known to man will touch us in the end times. How is that going to happen? Maybe people think God's just going to, sprinkle his magic over every human body, and all of a sudden we're not susceptible to anything. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not saying I'm knowing. I'm not trying to make light of it. I fully believe God is going to raise up a people who choose to purify and sanctify themselves in spirit, soul, and body, so that no disease known to man can touch them. I believe that. Yeah, definitely. So I'm getting into the spiritual stuff now, because that's like really gets me excited, but I'll stop there.
No, it's okay. I love the spiritual stuff, because you made me think of last episode when you shared your testimony, and you mentioned alcohol, and that after you were filled with the Spirit of the Lord, you couldn't even drink anymore, that you didn't have a taste for it. And it made me think of that there is a reason why alcohol is called spirits. There is a demonic, the whole conversation we can have about that, right? When it comes to liquor and alcohol.
Right.
And then, of course, people want to talk about, well, wine, Jesus drank wine. We're not going to get into that. But just the toxicity of alcohol in the human body, and how much damage and that it can cause people, I think it just is another example of how, when you partner with the Lord, the way you partnered with the Lord, and he was like, don't do this anymore. Like, right. He took it away from you. And it was
Yes.
for a reason, because
Right.
he knew, you were on this path of health and clearing your body and learning about your body. And I just a thought that I had, because over the years, something similar has happened with me. I was never really a big drinker to begin with, so it's not necessarily something in my testimony, but I did drink from time to time, through the years, but I never enjoyed it. It was never something I really liked. And the closer that I grew to the Lord, the less my body could tolerate it. And I felt that was really, it felt like a spiritual thing. And I really related to what you said, because it was almost like the closer I got to the Lord, I would literally have a sip of wine and have a headache immediately. And I was like, I don't want to have anything to do. This is not for me.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's a spiritual component there for me personally in my own faith. So
yeah. And I think there's so much more available to us that we don't know and that we're missing. And I'm pursuing that too. The more we sanctify ourselves to the Lord and we seek to be pure and clean and holy and righteous, how much more is available to us in this life that we're missing out on?
yeah.
And I don't think we even know. And we've made it so normal to be okay with sweets and eating dessert after a meal and drinking coffee every day and having alcohol and like justifying doing these things in excess. And not that any one of those things in and of themselves is bad. I'm not saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that, are we purifying and sanctifying and separating ourselves from this world and being the Christians that the Bible calls us to be? And I'm not really want to be mindful here. People in your audience are just getting to know me. I am by no means some holy roller who has it all figured out. I have my own struggles. I struggle on and off with coffee. The Lord has really spoken to me about it, in indulgence in certain things. And so, we keep it really pure. We keep it really clean with our kids and our diet, and we do our best, but I am by no means perfect. I have my own issues and struggles in my mind. And it is honestly why I fast a lot, because I fast because I want to sanctify myself, and not just spiritually, but in my body as well. And I know the benefits of fasting. I know that's something you mentioned, maybe we'll talk about in the future. But I am fascinated with the possibility of how much deeper of a spiritual life we could live if we truly sanctified ourselves from the fleshly pleasures of this world, which Paul is not shy in talking about at all in Romans 6, 7, and 8.
Sure. Yeah. You're onto something here. And I definitely think this is something for our listeners to dive into themselves and to really, search your own heart and life, because we all have our different vices. I guess you could even call it coffee, chocolate, candies, desserts, whatever it is.
Whatever,
I follow this woman on Instagram who is she does parasite cleansing. Funny enough that you should mention that. And last episode, we talked about that. Rachel actually had to unfollow her because she was posting pictures of the parasites a lot, and Rachel couldn't take it anymore. But she does I've learned some good things from her. And one of the things that was interesting that she said is that certain foods are fueled off of, they fuel parasites. So for example, let's use like chocolate cake. If something in the chocolate cake is fueling your parasite, it's almost like it's your parasite that is having this craving, your parasite that wants you to indulge in this food. And if we think about this from a spiritual perspective, is it the humanness of us? Is it the sinful part of our nature that's craving these things that then we put into our bodies and make us sick, and do fuel our parasites and do fuel the things that make us sick? I think that this is definitely a spiritual conversation, because there is a spiritual element to why we seek these things as well.
Yes. You are speaking my language.
The stronghold that we're giving into with some of, because it would be much easier if we were just to talk about alcohol, for example. That's the easiest example, that those that struggle with alcohol addiction, that is a stronghold. There's a spiritual aspect to that. So
Yes.
who's to say that that's not the same for other foods and other
Yes.
beverages or whatnot?
Yeah.
So we all
And
do have to search ourselves. I'm not perfect in any way, but I do think birth, going through pregnancy, my first pregnancy, I did not eat healthy. I wasn't as aligned with the Lord as through that experience was when I really was pulled back to him.
yeah.
And I gained a lot of weight during that pregnancy and I just wasn't living healthy. The second time around, when I was in partnership with the Lord, I only wanted to eat healthy things.
Right.
That's what I craved, vegetables and salads, and I drank red raspberry leaf tea and my other
Yes.
teas like I was going out of style, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Amen.
noticed a huge shift when I was aligned with him in what I consumed. So
Yes.
anyway.
That's part of my wife's story is very similar. First pregnancy, a lot of challenges. She had a cholestasis. She had some liver issues during pregnancy, which we worked through, doing herbs and different things to help her. But between pregnancies, and our first two daughters are only 20 months apart. But as soon as she gave birth, we went after her liver, did liver cleansing, liver detoxification, really worked on her body. That second pregnancy, wow, night and day difference. Never felt morning sickness, never had any health, never felt bad the whole pregnancy, actually felt great the whole pregnancy. So much so, she was 5.5 months pregnant, came to me concerned. And she said, do you think there's any possibility there's something wrong or something wrong with the baby or the pregnancy? Because she felt no symptoms of being pregnant. So that was how hugely different it was in partnering with the Lord, like we're talking about, and in her health and working on her liver between pregnancies. Like I've heard doctors say that if you don't have morning sickness, something's wrong. Again, morning sickness, it's a sign, it's a symptom, it's a congestion problem, a toxicity issue. If you're not nauseous, it's because your body can't handle any more than the load it's already carrying. It's always a sign that something's off. So anyway, I just wanted to parallel your story that my wife had a similar experience with her births.
That is interesting. I did have really bad morning sickness with my first daughter, where I had bad morning sickness there was nothing that I was new at the time to help with that. The second time I did have morning sickness again and it was pretty bad. But at this point I had started going to a more natural practitioner, and he actually had me taking high doses of B6 from animal products, and B12. I was taking beef liver. So I took beef liver and B6, and taking that alone was enough to curb the morning sickness. So now I'm pregnant again, third time. I got ahead of it because I just assumed that was what was my problem again, and I started taking that, and I really didn't have much of an issue this time. But I find it really interesting that what you're mentioning, it kind of sounds like I should probably do some detoxing after this baby is born to clear out anything else.
What does beef liver help with? Your
My
liver.
What's that?
Your liver.
My liver. Yes, that's a good point.
Yeah,
I need to add milk thistle into my regimen too. I know I've been like talking about dandelion root a lot, but I need to do more
liver support. And I actually have a pregnancy. It's a liver detox tea. I have a liver detox tea 1 and 2, but 1 is for pregnant women because it's all safe herbs to take during pregnancy. And so it's a way to support your liver even when you're pregnant with safe herbs. And so the reason the beef liver capsules are helping you is because it's helping to work on your liver, and B vitamins are crucial for liver detoxification. So it goes back to what I've talked about for years, and you can watch this stuff on my videos, is that so much of what women are struggling with through pregnancy is related to their liver health.
What is wrong with my liver, man? My liver is weak. I mean, it is.
You live in today's world. That's the problem.
It is a sad state of affairs with my liver.
To liver issues right now. Don't feel bad.
I know that we have so much more to get to, and we are going to continue the conversation with Dr. Vaughn. I'm so grateful that he's here to do a series with us. So if you have enjoyed today's episode, stay tuned because we're going to keep going. I do want to remind you to check the show notes for this episode. You can find it at theradiantmission.com/blog. Just click on this episode and all those resources will be in there, including how to find Dr. Vaughn. His website is spiritofhealthkc.com. You can check out these detoxes on his store at store.spiritofhealthkc.com. He is on Facebook at /Spirit of Health, Instagram at Spirit of Health KC, and on YouTube. You're going to want to check out his YouTube at Spirit of Health KC, where he has tons and tons of great content to check out. So thank you, Dr. Vaughn, for another great episode. And I look forward to keep chatting. And thank you for tuning in, being on this journey with us. If you'd like to follow along outside the podcast, as always, you can join us Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Radiant Mission. And if you're loving the show or this episode, be sure to share it with a friend. That's how folks find it, right? And today we are, today we're going to close with Proverbs 4, verses 20 through 23. My son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ear to my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them and health to one's whole body. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And we are wishing you a radiant week. See you next time.